Good afternoon. Today is October 25th, 2024. My name is Tom Toft. I'm a qualified tax expert. I am with the West Michigan Low Income Taxpayer Clinic, part of Legal Aid of Western Michigan, and today I'm going to be talking about what is an IRS Notice of Deficiency. It's not a bill. Now, before we get started, I want to mention that this is not legal advice. Nothing in this presentation is a substitute for a private consultation with an attorney regarding a legal problem. The information in this presentation relates to the current state of tax law. Tax laws can change. Now that we got that out of the way, the IRS sends lots of notices and letters. Some ask taxpayers to respond. For example, the IRS has a question about a tax return. The IRS needs to verify identity. The IRS needs additional information. The IRS changed their tax return. The IRS examination department seeks documents, so the IRS proposes more tax owed. So the IRS is proposing more tax owed when they send you a notice of deficiency. The IRS is proposing to make changes to your return, and it plans to do that. The IRS thinks you owe it tax, so it sends a notice letting you know the details and that you have a right to sue the IRS in court. An IRS notice of deficiency is your legal notice that the IRS is proposing a deficiency. The IRS is still proposing an amount due at this point. A notice of deficiency is not a bill. The notice of deficiency usually provides you with information about your right to challenge proposed IRS adjustments in U.S. tax court. A notice of deficiency contains a deadline. You must file a petition with the court within 90 days of the date of your notice of deficiency, or 150 days if the notice is addressed to a person outside the U.S. It's important to know that filing a petition is how you sue the IRS in U.S. tax court. Now, I've bolded that because every year I meet people who get a notice of deficiency and then they fill out a petition and they send it in, and they think that they are sending the petition to the IRS to continue working with the IRS, and they don't realize that they have actually sued the IRS in tax court. If you file a petition, that is how you sue the IRS in U.S. tax court, and you are in court. You are no longer directly working with the IRS. Now, U.S. tax court, it's a federal trial court. The U.S. tax court is an independent judicial forum. It is not controlled by or connected with the IRS. Most U.S. tax court cases are settled with the IRS without a trial. If there is a trial, a taxpayer and the IRS present their arguments and supporting evidence to a judge who will decide on the matter. The U.S. Tax Court website, How do I start a case in tax court, provides a lot of good information about how you can get a case going. It has a link to a paper petition you can fill out, and also has links to information about filing a petition online through the tax court's website. And I provided a link here where you can get that information. Now, after you get a notice of deficiency, some options. You can ignore it. If you don't let the IRS know whether you agree or disagree, then after the deadline to file a U.S. tax court petition passes, the IRS will make the proposed changes to your return, and you will owe the IRS. You can agree with it. You can sign what is called a waiver or a response form and agree to all proposed changes. Waivers or response forms are usually included with notices of deficiency. If you sign that you agree or consent, the IRS will make the changes to your tax return and you will owe the IRS. You will be signing away your right to challenge the amount the IRS says you owe. You can disagree and work directly with the IRS. You can contact the IRS to explain why you disagree and give it information supporting your disagreement. The IRS address and phone number is usually on page 1 of a notice. If you're getting nowhere with the IRS, you can still file a petition with the U.S. Tax Court. But be careful. If you choose to work directly with the IRS, but don't file a U.S. Tax Court petition by the deadline, and then the IRS doesn't change its mind, you've lost your right to sue in U.S. Tax Court and will owe the IRS. And you have an option to disagree and file a petition with the U.S. Tax Court and not even deal directly with the IRS anymore. This allows you to dispute some or all of the proposed changes and amount through a court which is independent of the IRS. And I want to note again that the vast majority of cases settle with the IRS without a trial. But if it goes to trial, then the court decides the result. I want to mention that notices of deficiency don't all look the same. But generally, it will be titled Notice of Deficiency. We'll tell you what tax year and the amount proposed as owed. It will let you know you can agree or disagree with the notice. A notice of deficiency will usually inform you of your right to sue the IRS in U.S. Tax Court and give the deadline. Some notices of deficiency clearly say changes and amounts are proposed, while with others it's not so obvious, making it easier to think it's a bill. Some notices of deficiency give details of proposed changes in the notice itself, while others may refer to other information enclosed with the notice. Let's take a quick look at an example. This is a notice of deficiency that was issued after there was unreported income that the IRS learned about. It sent what's called a Notice CP2000, letting a taxpayer know about it, and things were not worked out directly with the IRS at that stage, so it sent this Notice of Deficiency. You'll see that on the page it clearly says in bold, Notice of Deficiency. And in this particular one, if you look to the bottom, I've circled a couple of places, this notice clearly says proposed, increased, and changes. So it's easier to know that this is not a bill and you can still challenge the IRS. This one, it jumps right out that it's not a bill. It says proposed increase, proposed changes. And of course, if you see the words notice of deficiency on the front, you should just assume that, hey, this is a proposed amount, even if it doesn't say these things. You'll see in the upper right-hand corner, there is a last date to petition the tax court. So that's the last day you can sue the tax court. If you see that on a notice, the last day you can sue the IRS. If you see that on a notice, then you'll know that it is not a bill. It's actually still in the phase where you can argue about it. Now, this example is pretty clear that the IRS is proposing amounts. But let's take a look at a different one. This is the top of a first page from a notice of deficiency that was sent after an examination with the IRS. On this notice, it is not so obvious the IRS is just proposing changes to your return. If you look to the lower left, you can see where I circled, it says you owe. I circled another spot where it just gives a deficiency amount. But if you look to the very center of the page, it says Notice of Deficiency. If you see Notice of Deficiency, it's not a bill yet. It's not a bill. They are proposing to do this, and you still have the right to challenge it. And a giveaway, again, over on the right side, kind of almost in the upper right-hand corner, it gives you a last day to file a petition with the U.S. Tax Court. If you see that you have the right to file a petition with the U.S. Tax Court, it means you don't owe any amounts that are mentioned in this yet. You still have a chance to argue, disagree, and try to work things out. On this excerpt from a Notice of Deficiency, I just wanted to show that usually it'll give you the option or explain to you that you can disagree or agree. So when you see a notice and it says if you disagree, or you have the option to disagree, if you agree, that type of language, the money is not owed yet. Any amounts in here, it's not owed. Right now, it's still being proposed, and you have a right to challenge the IRS. To the lower right, there's a little area I circled where there's a lot of detail about your rights to file a petition with the U.S. Tax Court. If you see language like this, it means it's not a bill. You still have a right to challenge things. But, I do want to mention waiving rights. A Notice of Deficiency will probably have a waiver or response form you can sign to agree to everything the IRS proposes. If you speak to the IRS about a Notice of Deficiency, an agent may try to convince you that signing a waiver is in your best interest when it is not. For example, being told to sign the waiver just so you can later ask the IRS to waive any penalties. Don't sign an IRS waiver or response form unless you fully understand it. Ask a tax professional to explain your rights and whether it benefits you to sign a waiver or response form. Here's an example of a waiver from a Notice of Deficiency. I put a little note to watch out, because this is a form that you can sign to give up your right to tax court and agree to everything the IRS proposes. Sign the waiver and you will owe the proposed amount. And if you look to the lower left a little bit, I circled the words immediate assessment. If you see the words immediate assessment, well, that equals you now owe. So if you sign this, you are agreeing or consenting that you owe the amount now. So don't sign an IRS waiver unless you fully understand it. Here's a screenshot from a response form that was with a Notice of Deficiency. If you sign, you give up your right to tax court and agree to everything the IRS proposes. Again, you'll see this language circled near the top, immediate assessment. What that means is immediate assessment means you owe now. Don't sign an IRS waiver or a response form unless you fully understand it. Sometimes these forms look a little bit different, but just if you're signing, it's probably where you are agreeing to whatever the IRS wants. So a really good, safe way to look at it is just don't sign it until you talk to somebody, okay? The reason I'm bringing this up is that also every year I have folks that come in that have already signed away their rights. And then they change their mind, but it's too late. Because now they've signed this, they sent it to the IRS, and they've agreed to everything the IRS wants. It's not the end of the world. Sometimes there's still things to be done, but you do give up a lot of your rights, and it's much better if you disagree to not sign a form saying that you agree to everything. I want to end up by providing some resources. I always like to mention that there is free tax preparation. Some people qualify for free tax prep help, especially those with low or moderate income, disabilities, limited English proficiency, or those aged 60 plus. You can look into the volunteer income tax assistance and tax counseling for the elderly programs. And I provided a website the IRS has with information on those programs. You can check out United Way's My Free Taxes at www.myfreetaxes.com. can also call 211 during the filing season and ask for free tax preparation. Most free tax services are only open during tax filing season, but some are open year-round. And I've provided some helpful links. The first 3 are links by the IRS has to information about a couple of types of notices of deficiency. One's from the Taxpayer Advocate Service. There is a link to a sample of a notice of deficiency the IRS puts out there. It's got all the pages. And at the bottom is the website again for the U.S. Tax Court, where they give information to petitioners on how to start a case. Are there any questions? Okay then. Well, I appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your afternoon, and until next time, goodbye.